Hello, my name is Virginia Soenksen, and I'm delighted to be here today to take part in this symposium. I'm the director of the Madison Art Collection at James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and I want to start out by thanking Katina for this invitation. Today I'm going to discuss objects related to katagami in the Thomas Murray Collection, which recently joined the Minneapolis Museum of Art. This gift, along with a gift of the Bill Clark Collection, makes the MIA one of the largest repositories of Japanese art outside of Japan. I've worked in different capacities in museums over the years, and now as director I do a little bit of everything, but I've always been able to circle back to my first love, which is the study of Japanese textiles. To me, the study of textiles is the study of human nature. Who we are, how we see ourselves, and how we connect to one another. The creation and production of textiles dates back 27,000 years, as old as stone tools and art itself. Textiles cross time, geographic boundaries, and cultural barriers, literally threading together our world. They are intimate expressions of identity, resting against our skin to form a second one that acts as a tacit means of communication with others. In short, they offer an ideal lens through which we can examine and understand humanity. The traditional clothing and fabrics featured in this lecture were made and used in the islands of the Japanese archipelago between the late 18th and mid-20th century. I first met Thomas and his collection of Japanese textiles during my time at the Clark Center for Japanese Art and Culture, which was founded by Bill Clark in 1995. Bill, founder and former CEO of Worldwide Sires, amassed a collection of almost 2,000 objects, one of the largest privately owned collections of Japanese art anywhere outside of Japan. Clark described himself as a, quote, unrestrained, undisciplined, crazy collector, end quote, and his acquisitions reflected his broad enthusiasm for the breadth of Japanese art. Of note are the collection's Kamakura period Buddhist sculptures, its Edo period paintings, and its Celadon ceramics by contemporary ceramicist Fukami Sueharu. Clark was one of the very few Americans to have received 2 Orders of the Rising Sun from the Japanese government, one of which was for his promotion of the study of Japanese art and culture. At the Clark Center, I worked on an exhibition of Japanese textiles which ran in 2 parts. Titled Woven Identities of Japan, the first installation featured Thomas Murray's spectacular collection of Okinawan and Ainu garments and fabric. Thomas is an independent researcher, collector, lecturer, and private dealer of Asian and tribal art with an emphasis on Indonesian sculpture and textiles, as well as animistic art from other varied cultures. A contributing editor to Hali magazine for more than 30 years, he serves as its in-house consultant on ethnographic textiles and has more than 50 publications to his name. He is past president of the Antique Tribal Art Dealers Association and served a 3-year term as a member of U.S. President Barack Obama's Cultural Property Advisory Committee at the Department of State in Washington, D.C. Thomas and I were both enthusiastic about Ainu and Okinawan textiles, but also of Japanese textiles that were part of daily dress, workwear, and festival garb. Thomas approaches collecting with the same philosophy of the Minge movement, which sought to preserve traditional art forms such as the handmade textiles used by country people, farmers, and fishermen. Following the run of Woven Identities, Thomas and I began working on a project that would later become the book Textiles of Japan, the Thomas Murray Collection, published in 2018 by Prestel and Hali Publications. Thomas was drawn to a variety of textiles, many of which feature the intricate stencil-dyed technique of karazome. Many of my fellow presenters will focus on stencil dyeing of the mainland, but I thought I'd highlight examples of stencil-resist dyeing in the islands of Okinawa Prefecture. The prefecture stretches across the Ryukyu Islands, a group of subtropical islands south of Kyushu. While today part of Japan, they once comprised the Ryukyu Kingdom. This kingdom was not a cultural outpost of Japan, but rather an independent one with its own cultural traditions, religious beliefs, and art forms. The islands sit at a critical entry point between Northeast and Southeast Asia, and this positioning allowed the kingdom to become a major maritime trading power that enjoyed a vibrant artistic exchange with numerous foreign countries. It was here that a polychrome paste and stencil resist technique called bingata emerged. As you can see from these two examples, the technique produces incredibly vivid textiles with mirrored or repeating motifs. This was a luxury form of textile decoration due to the time-intensive expert skill needed to produce it. The royal court had authority over all bingata production, with imported raw materials and stencil designs distributed to dyers by the tax revenue office. At left, you see an upper garment called a dujin, which was worn by a member of the royal family. At right is a winter garment that would have been worn by a member of the gentry class. The royal garment has larger motifs created by multiple stencils against a vivid yellow ground. The original audience would have recognized the combination of Chinese-style phoenixes and peonies as symbols reserved for use by the royal family. The gentry garment has smaller motifs created by a single stencil in colors other than yellow. Such differences would have visually reinforced the social hierarchy of the court. We have no definitive origin of bingata, as both the earliest written references and extant examples appear in the 15th century when it was a fully formed art. We know that there are similarities between bingata and several imported dye techniques also utilizing stencils and resist that entered the Ryukyu kingdom via trade in the 14th century. All of the techniques you see here would have been accessible to Ryukyuan artisans and may have inspired bingata to some degree. But cultural exchange is never strictly divided between an active transmitter and a passive receiver. Rather, it happens within a plural network, and bingata likely influenced the artisans of other countries as much as it was influenced by them. When viewed side by side, you can more clearly see the differences in style and design between karazome and bingata. On the left is cotton decorated with karazome from Honshu, colored in shades of blue and black. The design features 3 different kamon, or family crests. The fabric at right is an example of bingata. The skillful, intricate stencil work, the fine shading, and brilliant combination of colors are all distinct to bingata. The same design can be seen on a child's winter ceremonial garment in the Okinawa Prefectural Museum today. This example of bingata is not only connected to Thomas, but was previously owned by Kichiemon Okamura, a leading Mingei artist, and then Jack Leonard Larson, an innovative American textile designer, author, collector, and promoter of traditional and contemporary craftsmanship. Another item with the same provenance and style of double stenciling is this ryuso, or Ryukyuan style garment. The gussets under the sleeves, long wide collar, and shorter length are all characteristic of ryuso and distinctive from kimono of the mainland. Oborogata, often translated as double stencil dyeing, actually means hazy color patterns. Here the background is dyed light purple and covered with a stencil pattern of lattice work. The topmost layers incorporate the natural white of the fabric in diagonal stripes that depict stylized kanzei mizu, named for the kanzei troupe of No actors. This incorporation of Japanese motifs into Okinawan stencil dyeing reflects how artists can use cultural exchange to invigorate various art forms while still retaining the character of their own culture. An interesting item from the collection featuring karazome is this kimono. The cloth used to make this garment is bashofu, fabric made of the thread banana plant, a textile that is distinctive to Okinawa. However, the cloth was decorated and sewn into a garment on mainland Japan. We know this because karazome was used to create an imitation of kasuri, or a technique where threads are dyed before weaving. I consider myself very privileged to have worked with both the items in the Thomas Murray collection and the Clark Center collection, especially since both ended up in the venerable Minneapolis Museum of Art. The MIA has a long-held commitment to Japanese art that dates to its opening in 1915. Thanks to the purchase of the Thomas Murray collection of textiles, Mia is now the largest repository of Ainu robes outside of Japan. Many of these were featured in the exhibition Dressed by Nature, Textiles of Japan, which utilized our book as the catalog. I hope you've enjoyed this brief introduction to these collections, and it will leave you curious to learn more about karazome, bingata, and Japanese textiles as a whole. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of this symposium.